Hi everyone, Ryan here from Fight Game Analysis, and today we are going to be talking about the upcoming fight between Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega. But before we jump into that, if you've been enjoying the content, please go ahead and click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate your support. UFC 266 main event, Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega. Volkanovski is looking to defend his belt for the second time at 145 pounds against, a very committed and legitimate challenger in Brian Ortega. Now let's start off, talk a little bit about the champ. Look, I'll be the first to admit, when Alexander Volkanovski was coming up through the ranks, I underestimated him. All the way going up into that first fight with Max Holloway, I still didn't really truly understand the skill level that he had. Then he came out with the win in that fight, and I couldn't help but acknowledge what he brought to the table. I'm a huge fan of Max Holloway, and any man who's going to go in there and beat him, no matter how close the fight is, you come out with the win like that, that's something that has to stand up, and I just have to stand up and acknowledge it. So at that point, I went back and watched a few of the films going into that fight, saw the rematch with Holloway and how that went, and I just had to admit, man, that this dude, he's the total package. That's one of the main things that comes across to me when I look at Alexander Volkanovski on tape. He brings it all. He's got some takedowns when he wants them. He's got a really good jab. He's got the low kicks. Look at the way he worked that jab against Darren Elkins and Chad Mendes. Look at the way he worked those low kicks against Jose Aldo and Max Holloway in the first fight. Just that diversity that he has. He was able to back Mendes up, stopped one of the takedowns, got up from the rest with no damage. Man, that is impressive when you stop a takedown from Chad Mendes. Then when he gets more, he's not able to hold you down and do any damage. When you're able to land low kicks against Jose Aldo and Max Holloway, when you're able to control with the jab, the way he shoots the right hand and gets his head off the center line and works these little angles, and then he'll get into the clinch and then back up and shoot some more. Like, you can tell that he's got a very high fight IQ. It doesn't surprise me that he trains at a gym who's got some killers in it, right? He's over there at City Kickboxing with Israel Adesanya, Dan Hooker. Iron sharpens iron, man. And when you're in there training with those guys, along with the other cast of characters that they got at that gym, it cranks out talent. And you look at a guy like Volkanovski, and you can see what kind of stuff that does. On top of all of those individual technical skills that he brings, he's also got great cardio. He loves to bring the pressure. Dude is a handful for anybody 145 pounds. What's he, 32 years old? He's not very tall, but he's got a good reach. Like, he is something special. On top of the fact, look at how good Max Holloway has looked since those two losses to Volkanovski. Look at how good Max Holloway has looked since then. It made those wins that Volkanovski got that much more impressive. Now, standing across from him is going to be Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega is a little bit younger, 30 years old. He originally came into MMA already as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'll call him a phenom. I mean, he didn't exactly go out there and set the world on fire and win a whole bunch of international competitions or anything like that. But amongst a lot of highly talented people, including Henner Gracie, his head coach and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor, Ortega is highly acclaimed when it comes to his jiu-jitsu. And we've seen what he's been able to do with it in MMA. He comes in here and he's able to slip in, particularly these guillotine chokes. Man, he's able to slip them in there quick. They're tight. Dudes aren't able to get out of them. He can get them in the first round. He can get them in the third round. His submission game is highly, highly advanced. Now, that being said, his weak point was always his striking. We continually saw it getting a little better. We saw what he pulled off against Frankie Edgar with that devastating elbow, and we're thinking, man, he's finally coming around. He's got the aggression. He's got the explosiveness. His striking game was aided by the fact that he was not worried about getting taken down because his submission game was so good. He didn't care if you took him to the ground. He felt comfortable there, which gave him that much more confidence in being able to fully commit to his striking. But then we saw him get in there against Max Holloway. Then we saw what he looked like against the absolute top of the food chain. Max Holloway just tore him apart, destroyed him. Absolutely destroyed him on the feet. Brian Ortega didn't have any answers other than being incredibly tough and showing a lot of heart. You know what I mean? I hate to say it like that. I hate to try to sound as though that's dismissive of what he brings to the table. But when you look at that fight against Max Holloway, man, Brian Ortega got smoked. Then we don't see him for 2 years. A lot of time off, changes a lot of the members of his team. As a matter of fact, the only guy that he kept around was Henner Gracie. Then he comes out against the Korean Zombie. And a lot of guys say a lot of things pre-fight. A lot of guys will say a lot of things going into a fight. And one of the things that Brian Ortega was saying was that I'm going to come out here and look like a whole new man. My striking game's redeveloped. My game's redeveloped. You're not going to even recognize me from what I looked like before. And the man was absolutely correct. He came out there and his striking game was completely different, far better, far more advanced, understanding of distance, understanding of timing. He was able to land some good counters. He worked behind the jab a little bit. He's still got very good power. You know, he's strong and he's athletic. I mean, Korean Zombie's no joke. Ortega went out there and handled him. Looked very good doing it. Striking game looked, so much better than it did in the past. That being said, he still has a lot of the liabilities that he had before. I don't think he's very defensively responsible. I don't think he has great cardio. And I think particularly that leg kick's available to be taken on him. So, all that being said, the question is, what's it going to look like when these two step in the octagon with each other on Saturday night? I think this, first off, let me say, I think this is going to be a great fight. Both of these men are going to show up 100%. Neither one has even the slightest doubt in their ability. Neither man thinks that there's even the slightest chance that they're going to walk away with a loss on Saturday night. And when you really, truly believe that, when you see both men show up there in the prime of their careers, man, that makes for fireworks. And that's what I think we're going to get from both of these guys, at least as long as it lasts. Who knows? May go the distance, may end early, right? Not really jumping out there and saying that just yet. But I'm going to say that I think this one's going to Alexander Volkanovski. I think his striking game is a little bit more advanced than what Ortega brings to the table. Ortega looked good against Korean Zombie. He was able to control the distance. He was able to control the pace, and that allowed him to do what he wanted. You could see that he's getting better with his striking, but he still has to think a little bit. And I understand that because it's relatively new. He came into the game from a hardcore Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background. But when you're in there against a guy like Alexander Volkanovski, who's got a really good jab, he's got a longer reach, by the way, than Ortega, even though Ortega's taller. But Volkanovski's got a really good jab. He's got a really good right hand. He understands how to work angles. He knows how to mix in takedowns. He's got a really good low kicks. You don't have time to sit there and think about your striking. And not only that, Volkanovski's going to push the pace more than Ortega wants. He's going to mix in those takedowns every now and then. I don't think Volkanovski, if he feels like he's got the rhythm of the fight, if he feels like he's controlling the striking, I don't think that he's going to shy away from getting a takedown here or there because of the points that it'll give him and the way that it looks good for the judges, just based off of the fact that Ortega may catch a submission. Look, Volkanovski's smart. He's got a really high fight IQ. I think he understands how to keep it where he can place his head while he's going for a single leg so that he can stay out of the way of those guillotines. I don't think he's going to be completely shy away from him. You know, get Ortega down, maybe score some points, keep him down for a minute or two, whatever the case may be, let him back up. But ultimately, I think the majority of this fight's going to happen on the feet, and I think Volkanovski has a clear advantage there with the cardio, with the work rate, just with his overall IQ and what he's brought to the table, what we were able to see him do against Max Holloway. I think he comes away with the victory on this one. So let me know what you guys think. Is this going to be the second title defense for Volkanovski at 145? Or are we going to hear and New and Brian Ortega is going to be the champ? Let me know what you guys think.